He rescued a woman stranded on a mountain track. Cost him his career, his peace of mind, and nearly his good name. Then a fleet of 10 luxury vehicles pulled up outside his residence. It commenced with the shifting gravel, sharp and loose beneath his hiking boots, compelling him to momentarily brace himself. Kevin Daly had navigated this section of Beartooth Pass countless times. He cherished the solitude, the elevation, the crisp air. It was a rare sanctuary where he felt unburdened by labels. Not just a nurse or a black man or a number in some HR system. Here he was simply Kevin, breathing clean air, allowing the complexities of the world to settle beneath him. But this particular Sunday something felt amiss. A faint murmur. That's what arrested his steps. Not animal, too distinctly human. It emanated from beyond the marked trail, perhaps 30 feet deep within the thick undergrowth. He hesitated a mere couple of seconds, then shed his pack and pushed through the foliage. "Hello? Can you hear me?" he called out. A response came back, shaky and weak. "Here, please." That's when he found her. Her face was smudged with dirt and blood, hair matted against her forehead. Her right leg was contorted at an angle that tightened his gut. Hiking trousers were ripped at the thigh, blood already starting to dry at the seams. "I've got you," Kevin said, his nursing instincts taking over as he knelt beside her. She recoiled slightly. "Don't touch me." "Wait, who are you?" He raised both hands, palms open. "Kevin. I'm a nurse. You're badly injured, but I can provide assistance." She blinked, appearing disoriented. "My phone, it's dead." He gave a brief nod. "Let me examine your leg, all right?" She didn't respond, but she didn't hinder him either. Kevin worked swiftly. He gently probed the swelling, observed the distorted angle, and immediately recognized the need for stabilization. Reaching into his backpack, he retrieved 2 aluminum tent poles and a roll of gauze. She watched him, breathing rapidly, pain etched in her eyes, yet silent. "This will hurt, but it will help considerably more," he assured her. She clenched her jaw. Just do it." Kevin expertly secured her leg, utilizing the poles as an improvised splint. He tore the sleeves from his undershirt for additional padding. He hadn't had to field dress a limb since his nursing school days, yet the technique returned like muscle memory. "Are you alone?" he asked, maintaining a calm tone. She nodded slowly. "I needed space. Just a weekend to clear my head." "Poor timing for that," he murmured, adjusting the final wrap. When he attempted to lift her, she cried out in pain. She was slight, but an unconscious body always felt heavier. He took a steadying breath, braced his back, and lifted her into a fireman's carry position, her arms around his neck, legs resting across his arms. They were at least 3 miles from the ranger station. "I'll stop when you need a rest," she whispered through gritted teeth. Kevin glanced at her. "Nah, I'll stop when you need a rest. You've already done your part." She actually chuckled at that, a strange, brief, almost bitter sound. "You make a habit of hiking around saving strangers?" Kevin managed a smile despite the ache already starting in his arms. "Only the wealthy ones with blood on their faces." She squinted at him. "You don't know who I am, do you?" "Nope." "Should I?" Her silence served as the answer. The descent was grueling. Every step shifted her weight. Once he nearly lost his footing, slipping and landing hard on one knee, jolting them both. But he pressed on. He couldn't stop. She was semi-conscious by the time they reached the station, skin pale, lips parched, body trembling. The ranger, a lanky fellow named Wyatt, opened the door and froze. Kevin wasted no time. "Lower tip fib fracture, mild head trauma. I stabilized it, but she requires immediate evacuation." Wyatt sprang into action after that, radioing for assistance, noting down her name. Kevin barely registered what she said until Wyatt's voice cracked. "Wait, you're Blythe Kessner?" Kevin blinked. He looked down at her, but she wasn't looking back. Her eyes were closed, head resting against his chest. He didn't utter another word, but the name lodged in his mind, heavy as the weight he'd just carried down the mountain. Kevin didn't drive directly home. He lingered in his truck for a while, parked near the ranger station, elbows propped on the steering wheel, staring into nothingness. The weight of the preceding hours hadn't fully settled until now. His arms ached, his shirt was stiff with sweat and grime, his knee throbbed from the fall. But all he could contemplate was that name, Blythe Kessner. It had held no significance in the moment, but the expression on the ranger's face, as if he'd just witnessed someone shed a disguise to reveal royalty, that stayed with him. He retrieved his phone and searched the name. Tech magnate. Billionaire. CEO of Terra Helix, the clean energy firm that had disrupted the oil industry. Seldom made public appearances, maintained a low media profile. Net worth somewhere in the vicinity of $6 billion. Kevin let out a low breath and leaned back in his seat. He hadn't recognized her, merely another individual in distress. And that's precisely how he had treated her. A part of him wondered if that was why she hadn't revealed her identity sooner. Perhaps for once it felt good not to be treated like a headline. By the time he arrived home that evening, his phone was already buzzing incessantly. Wyatt must have spoken, or perhaps someone from the helicopter crew that had evacuated her. Local news outlets were picking up the narrative, hailing him as Montana's quiet hero. Someone had captured a blurry photograph of him carrying her down the trail, muscles strained, face locked in concentration. His neighbors in the apartment complex had left a handwritten note on his door. "You're the talk of the building, man." That was some heroic stuff. Signed Tammy in 2B and her teenage son Rowan. He smiled, affixed the note to his fridge and collapsed onto his couch. That night he slept deeply. But upon waking, the situation had transformed. Camera crews were stationed outside his building, a news van with its side door open, a reporter holding a microphone conversing with someone near the curb. Kevin peeked through his blinds and groaned. He wasn't suited for this kind of scrutiny. A packed ER, a wailing child, a motorcycle crash victim, fine. But people clamoring for sound bites, spotlights, that wasn't him. His phone vibrated again. A message from his supervisor, Lorna Pascoe. Concise and sharp. "We need to converse. Report in today 11. Kevin stared at the screen for a few moments, then typed, "Is this regarding the patient I assisted?" No reply. He showered, dressed in his scrubs and exited the building via the back staircase, avoiding the cameras. He took the circuitous route to Westbrook Medical, entering as if it were just another day. But it wasn't. People didn't regard him the same way. A few offered hesitant half-smiles, others averted their gaze as if caught observing something private. It felt unsettling, like admiration and judgment were vying for space in the same vicinity. He tapped on Lorna's office door. She motioned him in without looking up from her laptop. "Sit," she instructed. He complied. He got straight to the point. "You abandoned your shift without notification." "It was my scheduled day off," he stated. "Technically, yes," she conceded, "but you remained on emergency call status. Had we required you, you would have been unreachable." Kevin blinked. "I saved a person's life." "You violated protocol," she said flatly. A long silence ensued. Then she clasped her hands. "Look, Kevin. The board is displeased. One of them has business dealings with Terra Helix. This kind of media attention, it's complicated." "You're serious?" he asked, stunned. "I'm not asserting it's equitable, but decisions are being made that are beyond my control." He stared at her, feeling a surge of heat in his chest. "So what?" "I'm suspended." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're being terminated. Effective immediately." Kevin slowly rose. "You're dismissing me because I rendered assistance?" "Because of the perception," she corrected. He departed the office without uttering a word. In the corridor he passed a nurse he had mentored 2 years prior. She attempted to meet his gaze, he didn't allow it. But as he stepped out of the hospital for the final time, a feeling in his gut told him this was far from over. Kevin didn't head home immediately. He drove aimlessly, knuckles white on the steering wheel, heart pounding with a fury that had no target. He wasn't entirely surprised, but that didn't diminish the sting. Being fired was one thing, but being cast aside for doing what was right felt deeply unjust. He pulled into the parking lot of a roadside diner off Interstate 90, somewhere between Billings and Laurel. The kind of place with faded signage and a long dormant jukebox. He'd eaten there a dozen times during demanding shifts. The waitress, was behind the counter as usual, cracking eggs one-handed and muttering at the radio. Kevin slid into a booth by the window. She noticed him after a moment. "Hey Kev, you look like death warmed over. Coffee or something stronger?" He let out a dry laugh. "Both." In that sequence. She brought the coffee without a word. After a while she leaned on the counter and regarded him. Saw you on the news. That was you, huh? The hiking nurse. He shrugged. Guess so. What they didn't mention, she remarked, is how that billionaire wound up out there without anyone knowing. Whole town's buzzing. Kevin sipped the coffee then said quietly, she didn't seek attention. Neither did I. B nodded slowly. Some folks do good and keep quiet. Some folks snap pictures and pat themselves on the back. Apparently doing the right thing just got me canned, he added. She didn't flinch. Let me guess. Something about regulations, timing, liability? Kevin offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. They claimed it was because I was on emergency call status. But I know it's deeper than that. Someone on the board didn't appreciate me making headlines with her. B snorted. That's about the lamest excuse I've heard in ages. He gazed out the window. A storm was gathering from the west, gray clouds piling up like masonry. You know what the kicker is? He asked. She hasn't even reached out. Not a text, not a call. I'm not angry at her. I just thought maybe she'd check in. B refilled his cup. Maybe she will. Or maybe she believes you don't require gratitude. But Kevin wasn't so sure anymore. He returned home late that night. No cameras, no reporters. Just silence. The intense focus had dissipated faster than it had arrived. Perhaps it had all simply blown over. Perhaps it was for the best. He sat on his couch, scrolling through job listings on his phone. ERs in Missoula, urgent care centers in Bozeman. Nothing nearby, nothing stable, nothing that compensated adequately. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. He answered. Hello. Pause, then a voice. Soft, steady, familiar. Kevin? It's Blythe. His mouth went dry. Wow. Didn't expect to hear from you. I wasn't certain I should call, she said. But I learned what occurred at the hospital. I'm truly sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen. He let the silence linger for a second. You didn't owe me anything. I did what anyone would have done. No, she responded firmly. You didn't. You carried a total stranger down a mountain with a fractured leg. You never once inquired who I was. You treated me like a person, not a trophy. Kevin shifted in his seat. So, why call now? Because I've been contemplating individuals like you, she said. People who face repercussions for acting rightly. I want to speak with you in person. He narrowed his eyes. You're still in Montana? No, but I'll be back tomorrow morning. Why? There was a pause. Because this isn't concluded. I have something I wish to give you. It's not charity. It's a gateway. He didn't grasp the meaning. Before he could reply, she added, You'll understand when you see it. Then she ended the call. Kevin stared at the screen. The call log now showed a blank number and a timestamp. The wind outside rattled the window pane, but something about her voice lingered. As if she already knew the next chapter of his life was about to materialize on his doorstep. Kevin awoke the following morning to the resonance of engines. Deep, low, smooth. Not the usual sputtering trucks or the occasional neighbor starting their SUV. This sound was distinct. And it wasn't just one vehicle. Multiple tires slowly crunched on the pavement. He rubbed his eyes, shuffled to the window and drew back the curtain. At least 10 automobiles were turning onto his street. Black, silver, deep blue. All meticulously polished to a gleaming finish. Not a trace of dirt on any of them. Mercedes, Bentleys, a white Rolls-Royce near the front. They weren't merely parking. They were lining up directly outside his building. Kevin recoiled from the window, his heart suddenly accelerating. He opened his front door just as Mrs. Holland from next door emerged, clutching her small dog and shielding her eyes from the morning glare. Do you know those people? She asked, eyes wide. Kevin could only stare. I think, perhaps. The passenger door of the Rolls-Royce opened slowly. A man in a dark suit stepped out first, followed by a woman, tall, composed, using a slender cane for support. Dark sunglasses, hair pulled back. But the moment she lowered the glasses, Kevin recognized her. Blythe Kessner. She wasn't surrounded by press or cameras, just a quiet entourage that seemed suited for a diplomatic mission. 2 carried sleek briefcases, one scanned the street as if assessing for threats. Blythe walked toward him slowly, her eyes fixed on his. I didn't intend to create a spectacle, she said once she was near enough. You brought a motorcade to my block, he said, half amused, half apprehensive. I did, she admitted. But I needed to ensure you'd speak with me. Neighbors were observing from windows, some taking photographs. Kevin felt every eye on them. Would you like to come inside? He inquired. She smiled. Yes, I would appreciate that. Inside his modest apartment, the aura of luxury felt incongruous. The silence between them was heavy. She took a seat at the small dining table while one of her staff placed a leather folder in front of her and discreetly withdrew. Blythe leaned on her cane and surveyed the space. I like it, she said. Feels like an actual person resides here. Kevin poured 2 glasses of water, more from habit than hospitality. Care to explain why you're truly here? I owe you more than just words, she stated. You already expressed that last night, he replied. But I didn't demonstrate it, she continued. You lost your position because of me, Kevin. I've thought about that constantly since I learned. He shook his head. You're not accountable for how people react. I don't blame you. But I blame myself, she said softly. Because I've spent years erecting barriers around myself. Money, silence, distance. You didn't solicit anything. And that is precisely why I am here. Kevin leaned against the counter. So what now? You write me a check. She laughed. I'm not here to purchase you off. He crossed his arms. Then what is the proposition? She opened the folder. Inside were documents, maps, blueprints, and a proposal bearing his name at the top. I've been funding mobile medical units in underserved areas of the country. Places where no hospital wants to operate. We've been seeking someone with genuine expertise, someone who can lead operations in the field, train others, and truly care, not just clock hours. He stared at the papers, reading the initial lines. You're suggesting I manage a clinic on wheels? I'm offering you the autonomy to build it as you see fit, she said. Equipment, personnel, even the routes. It will be your initiative. I will finance it. You determine its scope. Kevin looked up. Why me? Because you didn't inquire about my identity when I was at my most vulnerable, she said. And you carried me when I was unable to walk. That is the kind of individual I want constructing something of significance. He was speechless. His hands trembled slightly as he closed the folder. You don't have to decide today, she said, standing up. But if you accept, the first van is parked 2 blocks away. Prepared. She turned toward the door. Kevin followed her out, still wordless. But as the door closed behind her and those luxury vehicles departed, he realized the most arduous part wasn't carrying her down that mountain. It was deciding whether to embrace what she had just placed in his hands. The subsequent hours felt like standing at a complex intersection with traffic rushing past in every direction. Kevin sat at his kitchen table, gazing at the open folder as if it might somehow speak to him. The proposal contained within was more than magnanimous. It was transformative. Funding, independence, impact, everything most people in his profession only fantasized about. But it didn't seem real yet. He contacted his cousin Tyron, who resided in Spokane. Busy? Kevin asked. Nah, just watching some rerun about cops messing up a case, Tyron replied. You could. Kevin exhaled. Blythe Kessner showed up at my apartment this morning. You serious? Yeah. Rolled up with 10 cars and a team that looked like the Secret Service. What in the world for? She offered me a job. Not just a job, really. A project. Wants me to establish a mobile medical unit. Build it from the ground up. Go to places nobody else does. Tyron paused, then asked, And what's preventing you? Kevin surveyed his surroundings, bare walls, second-hand furniture, the microwave that never quite closed properly. It had sufficed, but now it felt like a depiction of a life built on compromise. I don't know. It feels immense, Kevin admitted. Too immense. Like maybe I'm not the right person for it. That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard you utter, Tyron retorted. You carried a billionaire down a mountain like a damn firefighter. Who else should be undertaking something significant if not you? Kevin didn't respond immediately. Tyron added, Don't let them terminating you be the narrative you recall. Let this be the next one. That stuck with him. Later that day, Kevin took a walk through town. No disguise, no hood pulled up. People recognized him, they kept their distance. But he noticed something else. Quiet stares, uncertain glances. He overheard someone whisper his name as he passed the post office. He stopped by the small park opposite the bus depot and sat on a bench. He reflected on the night shifts, the stretchers, the patients without insurance, the elderly man who came in weekly just to converse. He recalled how frequently he had advocated for someone on the verge of being overlooked. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. What Blythe was offering wasn't just a paycheck. It was authority. He would have a say in how people were treated, where the van went, what resources were available. It wasn't about charity. It was about confidence. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number Blythe's assistant had jotted down in the folder. A man answered. Mr. Daly? Yes. Inform her I accept. The man didn't miss a beat. She will be pleased. We will be by tomorrow morning to commence onboarding. Do you require time to relocate? Kevin paused. No. If I am to assist people, I wish to begin right here. The following morning arrived swiftly. A single black SUV pulled up, this time more inconspicuous. A woman in a gray blazer stepped out and introduced herself as Mara, a legal liaison for the foundation. She presented him with a new binder containing finalized documents. Everything had been approved: budget, staff allocations, outreach map. His name was listed as Director of Field Medicine. You will have your initial van by next week, Mara stated. We already have a preliminary list of towns in Idaho and South Dakota where healthcare is either inconsistent or non-existent. You will select the remainder. Kevin flipped through the pages. I've never managed anything like this previously, he admitted. Mara smiled. Neither had Blythe when she established Terra Helix. We aren't seeking polish, we're seeking authenticity. He signed the final page and returned it. Welcome to the work that matters, Mara said. As the SUV drove away, Kevin stood on his porch holding the folder. But as the dust settled from the tires, he felt something creeping in. Not doubt this time, but a query. What happens when people start observing you not for what you accomplished but for their perception of who you are? By the conclusion of the week, the first van arrived. It resembled a small mobile clinic more than anything else. Sleek, efficient, and remarkably quiet. Equipped with everything from portable ultrasound apparatus to trauma kits and refrigerated compartments for vaccines. It was the real deal. Kevin circled it in awe, running his hand along the side as if inspecting something borrowed and fragile. He was unprepared for how quickly the murmurs would follow. Initially, the comments surfaced online. Nothing too extreme, just the usual armchair critics. People questioned how a nurse, dismissed just days earlier, suddenly found himself directing a multi-million-dollar outreach initiative. A few anonymous tweets suggested he might have fabricated the entire rescue. One post gained traction. Man saves rich lady gets rich. Feels a bit too convenient, doesn't it? Kevin didn't respond. He never did. But the more he ignored it, the louder it seemed to become. Even people in town began behaving differently. A barista at the local coffee shop inquired if he was genuinely going to live off billionaire money now. A former patient from Westbrook walked right past him in the grocery store, eyes averting. It was as if the narrative had inverted overnight from hero to opportunist. Tyron called again one evening, his voice strained. Are you seeing this garbage online? Kevin sighed. Yeah. I've been trying to avoid it. They're making it sound like you hauled her out of the woods for a payoff. He leaned against the kitchen counter. I didn't even know who she was. You don't owe anyone an explanation, Tyron said. But if you don't address it, they're going to compose your entire history for you. Kevin knew he was correct, but every time he considered speaking out, he hesitated. He didn't want to appear defensive or self-righteous. He simply wished to help people quietly. That had always been his inclination. 2 weeks later, the mobile clinic's inaugural trip took him to a reservation just outside Poplar, Montana. The town's clinic had closed 2 years prior, and residents had been driving nearly 90 minutes for basic medical attention. He arrived just after sunrise. Word had already spread. A few dozen people were waiting. Mothers with young children, elderly men in folding chairs, teenagers attempting to act indifferent but still present. Kevin stepped out of the van, clipboard in hand, and announced, All right folks, let's commence the work. He spent 10 hours on his feet that day. By the end, his back was aching, but he had examined 46 patients, set 2 fractures, administered 70 flu shots, removed an infected splinter from a toddler's finger, and provided new asthma medication to a grandmother. That night, seated in the rear of the van with his shoes off and a sandwich in hand, he experienced a sensation he hadn't felt in weeks, solid, grounded. But the feeling was fleeting. One of Blythe's team forwarded him an article from a national gossip website. The headline read, "Nurse turned mogul, how Kevin Daly leapt from fired to funded." The piece lacked sources, relying solely on conjecture. Photos of him exiting the hospital were juxtaposed with a grainy image of the caravan that had appeared outside his building. It depicted the story as a rags-to-riches tale with dubious undertones. Blythe telephoned him the following day. "I read the article," she said. Kevin sighed. "It's not even accurate." "Accuracy is irrelevant to people seeking a reason to doubt," she replied. "What matters is how you handle it." He paused. "Should I respond? Clarify the facts." "That is your decision," she said. "But I will say this. Some individuals will always feel uncomfortable seeing someone like you hold positions of authority." He didn't need to ask what she meant, he felt it. But what kept him awake that night wasn't the gossip. It was wondering how many people who needed assistance might not come because they believed what they had read. A week later, Kevin sat across from a journalist in a small, unassuming cafe just outside downtown Billings. No camera crew, no bulky microphones, just 2 mugs of black coffee between them and a notebook the reporter barely touched. Her name was Shiloh Greer, a freelancer in her early 30s with keen, unwavering eyes. She wasn't affiliated with a gossip site or a major network. She had reached out through Blythe's office with a simple sentence. "I don't desire your scandal. I desire your perspective." Kevin had nearly declined, but then he considered all the patients who might avoid his clinic because they had read the wrong headline. He reasoned that if the truth was to be told, it had to originate with him. "You carried her 3 miles?" Shiloh asked, her pen poised. "No stretcher, just your arms?" He gave a slow nod. "4. I paused once to rest, but she was deteriorating rapidly. Couldn't risk waiting for a ranger team." "And you had no inkling who she was?" "Didn't matter," he said. "She was injured. I possessed the training. That was sufficient." Shiloh scribbled something, then looked back up. "Why do you believe the story took a negative turn?" Kevin pondered for a moment. "People dislike it when someone bypasses the queue. They assume that if life hasn't bestowed something upon you gradually, it must be a shortcut. Do you feel as though you bypassed the queue?" He met her gaze. "I was terminated for helping someone. Then I received a second chance from someone who could have easily forgotten me. I didn't request it, but I won't apologize for making it count." She offered a faint smile and turned the page. "Do you ever wish you had simply continued walking that day? Let someone else find her?" Kevin didn't even hesitate. "No. Never." That answer hung heavy between them. The interview ran 2 days later. It wasn't sensational or flashy. It didn't accuse anyone. It was simply honest. Kevin's own words, unedited and unspun. He discussed being raised by a single mother in Helena, how he entered nursing after witnessing a school friend bleed out because no one nearby knew CPR. He spoke plainly about the day on the mountain. No embellishment, no heroic narrative. People took notice. The clinic's inbox began filling with messages, from other nurses, from patients, from people in rural towns inquiring, "Will you come here next?" Donations followed, not from corporations but from ordinary individuals. One woman in Wyoming sent $40 with a note. "You helped that lady. Maybe you can assist my dad next." But not everyone welcomed the shift. One morning he discovered a note taped to the rear windshield of the van. "Bought and paid for. Hope she's worth it." No name, just a resentful message written in hasty capital letters. Kevin didn't report it. He didn't even mention it to Blythe. He simply crumpled the paper and discarded it in the dumpster behind the pharmacy. Later that week, while replenishing supplies, a man approached him outside the van. "Daly, correct?" Kevin turned slowly. The man was in his 50s with a scruffy beard and eyes too calm to trust. "I read that piece," the man said. "You talk real smooth." Kevin didn't reply. The man shrugged. "Just be careful. Fame like that, it doesn't endure. And when it reverses again, you better have a safety net." Kevin stared at him. "I'm not attempting to soar. I'm trying to work." The man smirked, turned and walked away. Later, Kevin sat alone in the van, lights dimmed, hands resting on his knees. He remembered something his mother had once told him. Doing good won't always feel good, but you do it anyway. He looked down at the binder on the seat beside him. 6 more towns were waiting. 6 more places where no one else was going. But that night he made a quiet resolve. People talk. He would build something too substantial for rumors to undermine. 3 months later the van had a different feel. Not outwardly but in the way people interacted with it. Children waved when it arrived. Elders arrived early just to sit in line and converse. Volunteers in each town began calling ahead to organize the day's patients, help manage foot traffic, even bring sandwiches for those who had traveled miles. Kevin had just finished checking a young boy's glucose levels in a rural town near Thermopolis, Wyoming. The boy's mother embraced him afterward. She said her son hadn't seen a doctor in over a year, the nearest clinic 50 miles away, and they lacked a vehicle. He was on the road 6 days a week now, 1 stop at a time. 1 wound, 1 narrative, 1 handshake. It was slow labor, honest labor, nothing glamorous. But every bandage, every vial, every pulse from the portable heart monitor held meaning. And the whispers? They had diminished. Of course, occasionally someone on social media would attempt to rekindle the old angle, accusations of favoritism, speculation about Blythe's motivations. But Kevin no longer felt the need to respond. He didn't have to. The individuals he assisted spoke louder than any online troll ever could. Blythe visited twice, discreetly. No motorcade, just her and a driver. He stayed for a few hours each time, asking questions, observing. She never imposed. She allowed him to lead. After her second visit, they stood behind the van as the sun dipped below the prairie horizon. "Ever consider expanding this?" she inquired. Kevin looked out at the field, a football being tossed between some kids in the distance. "Yeah," he said. "But I want to perfect it before going larger scale." She nodded. "That's the answer I was hoping for." He turned to her. "You never truly explained why you helped me. I mean, you said it was because I didn't ask who you were, but I sense there's more." She hesitated, then replied, "You didn't treat me like an undertaking. You didn't freeze or falter or try to perform. I've been surrounded by influence my entire life, Kevin. Most people treat you like a mirror. They merely reflect what they wish to see. But you saw a woman bleeding on the ground and said, 'I've got you.' That is uncommon." He didn't reply. There was nothing more to add. Before she departed, she handed him a letter, handwritten, neat, folded once. He read it later that night. It wasn't lengthy, just a few paragraphs reiterating her gratitude, and at the end a line that resonated deeply. "I have spent years constructing an empire. You reminded me that empires hold no value if people forget how to serve." Kevin kept that letter tucked in the van's glove compartment. Months elapsed, and by spring he had trained 2 additional nurses, acquired a second van through the same program. He chose the name himself, North Reach Mobile Health. One morning, a teenager named Zoe inquired if she could accompany him and shadow him for the day. She aspired to become a paramedic, not believing it was possible until she saw the van parked in her town. He consented. He showed her how to check blood pressure, how to communicate calmly, how to listen for what wasn't being said. When the day concluded, she remarked, "I didn't realize we could do something like this." Kevin looked at her and said, "We can. And you will." Back home, his fridge still bore the note from Tammy in 2B. The microwave still didn't quite close correctly. But none of that seemed important anymore. He was building something tangible, something enduring. And this time, no one could take it away with a corporate directive or a cold meeting in a small office. This time he held the narrative pen. Life doesn't always reward the most vocal person, or the one with the most polished resume. Sometimes, it finds the quiet individual carrying someone through pain, expecting nothing, and offers them an opportunity to redefine the parameters. If this account resonated with you, please share it. And if you believe in doing good, even when unobserved, subscribe for more stories that remind us of what truly matters.